Yes, thank you very much for this presentation, and I believe that it sparked some questions. So I will leave the floor for um, if anyone has a question, please use the icon reactions, and you can raise your hand so that we are aware that who wants to start us off by posing a question. Maybe you are thinking about, okay, Andreas.
Hi, is it Dr. Fenton or Pastor Fenton or Walter? What should I
Walter's
call you?
fine. Walter's fine.
Thank you for that presentation. I appreciate that. I'm a pastor, Swedish pastor, trained in the US and currently serving in Norway in the Norwegian Conference, two churches here. Couple of things. And what I'm trying to ask you is the process, basically, uh, for the two congregations I serve and for others like it here in Norway, it's quite far, and I have mentioned this before in other settings. Uh, the local church council sits in this little church building and contemplating what to do, and the process seems a little not convoluted, but a little difficult to grasp when it comes to actually deciding what to do. Whether or not to stay in the United Methodist Church, that's a clear-cut decision whether or not. But when it comes to joining the Global Methodist Church, who do you call? What exactly needs to happen? Do we need to? And I'm slowly learning some of the processes involved. But if you could, is there a 1, 2, 3 plan? Is there a certain way to do it? That would be my first question. What the steps would look like, and then second, if I understood your presentation correctly, there are basically two choices for a pastor or a congregation or whatever who is contemplating joining, and that will be to either join early on, to as soon as possible become even maybe before the decision is made, like start a WCA chapter, but to be an early adopter, so to speak, and to then help shape the denomination that is coming, or wait and see. And I wondered if you could sort of, when you mentioned the way you presented it, I kind of felt like, well, I don't know if I have the energy to build a denomination. Um, it's fascinating to be a part of such a process, but at the same time, it's a massive undertaking to be sort of weary and tired of coming out of the United Methodist Church. And it would be just fantastic if it was like a Christmas present where you open your, mail one day and you become a member of this Global Methodist Church and it's just finished. So that would be my second comment. Is that a correct understanding that it's either start early and help shape it, or wait until later and see what happens?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are
I
you
just
done?
wanted to ask you if I had made myself clear, if I had just been talking away.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate your commentary and your questions are helpful and perfectly justified and understandable. So please feel free to interrupt me if I'm going down the wrong track and trying to answer your questions. I want to first deal with the issue of you're saying it seems a little convoluted how the two local churches I serve are going to, make the transition to the Global Methodist Church. Is there a place I can go to where, I see step 1, step 2, step 3, and I finish those 3 steps, and now I'm part of the Global Methodist Church? I wish I could say it were that simple. Unfortunately, it's not, because we are all in different annual conferences. different jurisdictional conferences that we call them here in the US. You all are parts of districts, annual conferences, and central conferences where you live. And so when they were hammering out the protocol, they had to be mindful of these situations. And of course, there were people at the table who insisted on certain ways of allowing local churches to make a decision about joining a new theologically conservative Methodist church. They insisted on different ways of doing that. And matter of fact, Gabby kind of had to help me remember the other day when we were talking that it is a little different for local churches in central conferences to how they can join the Global Methodist Church once the protocol is passed. It's a little more complicated, but I think to get to your, and I don't know if you were talking about yourself or other pastors, you said, wow, I don't know if I'm up to, putting a lot of work into shaping a new denomination. It's a huge undertaking, and you're certainly right. It is exhausting. Like many of you, when I started out in the ministry, I pastored a small church in Michigan. When I was appointed, when I was appointed there, me and my wife moved out to the parsonage at the church, and it was a really struggling church. Matter of fact, they thought about closing it before they sent me out there to be a pastor. The building had a lot of trouble. When it would snow, the roof would leak. The parking lot was a mess. And so as local pastors, we all have a lot of things we need to worry about on a day-to-day basis. And so worrying about trying to build a whole new denomination is a big ask on top of everything that we are doing, visiting people in the hospital, trying to help the church grow. All of these issues are big. And I think that's why all of us are going to have to make an individual decision about how much we want to be involved in shaping the new church. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with a local pastor or a lay person saying, hey, I've got about this much time to give to making this new church a reality, but I want to be a part of it. So my way of being a part of it will be to vote for someone from our local church to speak into the process. And hopefully my voice, one way or another, will be heard on up the line as the decisions get made about the church. And that to us is key. It's the way that we Methodists have been doing things for a long time. We try to give laity and clergy as much say in the shape of who we are as possible. We think that that's really important. So we want to continue to do those things. And throughout this year, if you'll just continue to visit the Global Methodist Church website, where we just started coming out with a new newsletter called Crossroads. So almost on a weekly basis, we will be touching on a number of issues that will help people understand and have answers to a lot of the questions they have. And we can kind of get into specific questions as they pertain to local churches in their particular region of the world. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, sort of. I just wanted to clarify, if just briefly. I don't want to take up all the time. I am very much aware of the actual voting procedures and steps and so on that that has to take place in the local congregation. I was more thinking of assuming that my congregation has decided to join the Global Methodist Church, whatever process we have to do to vote this or to, whatever, then what? And that I think is interesting as far as, do we call someone? Do we get a little letter with an official logo? Like, what is the actual, once we have made our decision, which involves everything that it needs to involve, then what? How does that happen?
Sure. You, like many other churches, wherever they're at, will be in a period of transition. The Transitional Leadership Council We'll try to provide as much oversight and guidance as you all think you need. And then eventually we will have a convening general conference, and we will make decisions about the organization of the Global Methodist Church together as we go forward. So we just have to realize that for, I would say, anywhere between 12 and 18 months, we'll all be in a time of transition and trying to find our way, trying to get our legs under us as we stand up this new church. It'll be a learning process for all of us as we go forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for these questions and the answers as well. So who else have a question immediately? Oh, Norway again. Here you go. Dag.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fenton, for your presentation and your positive attitude towards this. I think I'm speaking on behalf of many Norwegians, or maybe I should say a few Norwegian pastors who are not happy with the decision that the Norwegian Methodist Church has made concerning the future. And I think there are several pastors and lots of lay people who actually feel much more in line with the Global Methodist Church. But of course, when the annual conference has decided that they want to move towards the future, which is progressive, it leaves just maybe a few churches who has the guts to step out of that process. But I think those churches and those pastors exist. I think we just need to see that this is actually a possibility. Not concern, but maybe my question is, of course, when we are a connectional church, it needs some kind of organization and structure. And would it be possible for 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 Norwegian churches to join the Global Methodist Church without being overloaded with too much structure that we need to build into this? You know, our concern is pastoral, and it's ministry focused. And we know that this is what the Global Methodist Church also wants. So how do you see the possibility of having a Global Methodist Church in Norway consisting of maybe only 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 churches? Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. That's not an issue. That's just an issue that churches in Norway are going to have to face. We've got local churches here in the United States, in say places like Montana or North Dakota, where there really aren't a lot of local United Methodist churches that might come to the Global Methodist Church. And so this is what I mean by we want to be real careful. We don't want anybody, whether it's the Wesleyan Covenant Association or the Transitional Leadership Council, who's helping to give formation to the Global Methodist Church while it's in transition. We don't want anybody etching in stone right now what folks in Norway are going to have to do in terms of the way they organize themselves. We want them to take ownership of that and think of how that the most fruitful way of doing that. And if the most fruitful way of doing that is an organization of 6 to a half dozen to a dozen local churches forming a small provisional annual conference or annual conference, then that's where we'll have to start. We all kind of have to remind ourselves of how we all started in the first place. It was small, and the church just continued to connect together really through class meetings. They weren't even churches when the Methodist movement got started, and we just worked our way forward. So one of the things I think that's really important during our transitional time and when we get to our convening general conference is for people to remember, one of the greatest virtues of the Christian faith, not just the Methodist movement, is being gracious and patient with one another. And I think that's a key thing. We won't be able to invent something with every T crossed, every I dotted. We'll have to work our way into being the Global Methodist Church. But the most important thing, and you hit on it, is doing ministry in our local community, sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with people around us, and reaching out in word and deed to share the gospel with people. That's going to be the principal focus. We think we can do that while we work on how we're going to be connected together in the most effective way.
Thank you. Samuel Jabornický from Slovakia is the next in line. Unmute yourself, please. Alt A.
Okay.
Okay.
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Fenton, for the presentation. And I have two short questions. Maybe I'm uninformed, so maybe it's unnecessary question. But when you were talking about the replacing of the bishop leadership or bishop type of the leadership, so what is the alternative, the other option? Whether some like congregational or congregation synodal form of the leadership of the association or the new global church. And the second question relates to the protocol you have mentioned. Is there some part of the churches who are thinking to avoid the pass of the protocol, or both sides or all sides are planning to pass the protocol? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take your first question and try and answer that, and then we'll come to the second one. I think at the end of the day, most churches who are going to want to be a part of the Global Methodist Church will ultimately decide that we do want bishops. We need leaders. The Episcopal office, as many of you know, is really as old as the Church Catholic. It's been a way of the way Christians have organized churches going back to the very early part of the Christian church. And so I think that we will ultimately have bishops, but we have to acknowledge that many United Methodists in annual conferences around the world, particularly in the United States, have been frustrated with either their Episcopal leader or an Episcopal leader in another area of the US or perhaps in Europe. Mostly, I think it's bishops here in the US that's caused the consternation. And again, I want to underline, not all bishops, just some bishops. And so I think some people are speaking out of their frustration that they have had with their bishop or another bishop and thinking maybe we shouldn't do that. And this really revolves around some moves that were made in the last year in the US where bishops kind of arbitrarily, rather surprisingly, wanted to move traditionalist local pastors from traditionalist churches that were the pastor and the congregations were very, very closely aligned. And that's caused a lot of disruption here. And then there's places around the world where bishops, some of the laity and clergy have been upset with him. But I think when people pull back and look at the bigger picture, they realize, we shouldn't allow our present experience or our past experience to entirely inform how we go forward. And so my guess is we will ultimately decide to have Episcopal leaders, but they're very likely to have term limits, that they wouldn't be bishops who would receive lifetime tenure. They would have maybe a term limit of 8 to 12 years, and then they'd move back in to serving as a pastor in a local church, or maybe they would be of retirement age by the time they finished their term and would simply retire at that point. But again, that's going to be a decision that's ultimately up to the convening general conference of the Global Methodist Church. Now, your second question, I think I lost a couple words. You were asking about the protocol. So if you could repeat that question, I'd appreciate it.
You were talking about the protocol, that it is most likely that the protocol will be passed. Yeah, am I right?
Correct.
And is there any opposition against the protocol, or none of the sides wants to block the protocol?
Yeah, there is some opposition to the protocol. There are some people of genuine, good-hearted, good, faithful people, and they just don't think we should pass the protocol. They think that the United Methodist Church should somehow find a way to remain united and to move forward into the future. Their struggle is presenting a plan for how we would go forward without returning to the battle that happens every 4 years and really in between our general conferences, that is really undermining the health and vitality of the United Methodist Church. I don't know the statistics in Europe, in Eastern Europe, but I know in the United Methodist Church here in the US, our worship attendance has been plummeting since the turn of the century. We're probably down over the first 20 years of the 20th century. We've probably lost 20 to 25%. And now with COVID, I'm sure it's continuing to grow. And that's starting to really affect, the total giving to the denomination. And so it's imperiling our ability to support the denomination, and it's really undermining the health and vitality of the church. So while I appreciate people who want to keep us united, they really don't have a plan or a prescription how we can really go forward in a united way without returning to the battles that continue to harm the church. So I think that's why at the end of the day, people are going to say, yeah, I don't like everything about the protocol, but we can't keep doing what we've been doing to one another at every general conference. And so I'm going to vote for the protocol and to allow the church to separate.
Thank you. Okay, see, I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question and for the answer as well. And now Daniel, our president, is.
Okay, I would like to make a comment connected to the concerns of our Norwegian brothers. We share the same concerns as you, because from the very beginning, we started to question ourselves about the future organization of the Global Methodist Church here in Eastern Europe and in Europe in general. So, and because it's a very interesting question for us, we decided to join the discussion very early on, talking about the possibilities how to organize the Global Methodist Church in our part of the world. And we shared our concern with the president of the Wesleyan Covenant Association, Keith Boyette, who is also a member of the transitional team, and its president, I think. And he challenged us with the invitation to make a presentation for the transitional team, how we, Eastern Europeans, imagine our own organization here. So I would like to encourage our Norwegian brothers to join this conversation, to make it not Eastern European only, but to make it all European, and to make this presentation together. I think it will be also challenging for the transitional theme and for their understanding of how we understand the global nature of the Global Methodist Church. So it's time to be part of the conversation, to share our opinion, and to share also our understanding about the future organization of the Global Methodist Church. So I'm inviting you to join us in preparing this presentation and sharing our understanding about it. We are also, not so many people, and we have the same minority concerns as in Norway, but despite of that, we decided to join the conversation and to prepare to be part of the different task forces preparing the Global Methodist Church, and not to wait simply for the decision and to decide afterwards. So if you're willing to join this conversation, we have open doors for you. And I'm absolutely sure that we need more European voices, not only from Eastern Europe, but from Norway, from Baltic countries and beyond. So you're welcome.
Great.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for these comments. They're really, really valuable. And Brother Oleg from the Ukraine raised his hand virtually. So Brother Oleg, it's up to you.
Добрый день, приветствую всех.
Good evening. Greetings all of you.
Спасибо огромное за презентацию такую замечательную.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.
Есть один вопрос очень важный, который я поднимаю на каждой встрече.
And I have one question which I try to raise on each our meeting.
Мы служим в Украине, у нас 10 церквей в Украине.
In Ukraine we have 10 churches here.
Это все консервативные церкви. Нам очень нравится идея глобальной церкви.
Our churches are like this. We love idea of Global Methodist Church.
Но есть один важный вопрос, о котором просто мы говорим снова и снова.
This is an important question which we raise again and again.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? Can you switch places so we can hear the interpreter? Because we can hear you all like very well, but not the interpretation. So it would help a lot of us, I think. So that you just move closer, please, Julia.
Gabi,
Yes.
I would like to say something. The interpretation works in both ways.
Вот, и
So, Oleg, just a second. If you choose the Ukrainian channel and speak in Ukrainian, all of us who are in English channel will listen to the official interpreter from Ukrainian to English. So there will be no problem at all. So the interpretation works both ways. If you choose Ukrainian and talk to Ukrainian, all of us who are listening to other language will listen to Bulgarian or English or whatever. So you can use that way. It's much better. That's we pay for that option.
Все. Вот. Да. И у нас нету каких-то теологических вопросов.
And we do not have any theological questions, any diversities, but we have more political question, which is very important for us. The thing is that we are concerned that when the structures are gonna be divided, we will become the part of Russia again, even though 2 years ago we have left Eurasian and Russian church unity. So we would like to declare again that we that becoming the part of Russia again for Ukraine is not an option. So when we will discuss the division in future, it is very important for us to declare to all the churches that our desire is to join global church and not to be the part of Russian church, because there is a military conflict going on between our countries, and it's very difficult for us. Even though we have many friends, brothers and sisters, we do communicate with Russia, but we cannot be together. And every time I raise the same question, and there is still no official answer on how the territory in Europe is going to be divided, but it's very important to keep in mind the situation that in Eastern Europe, it's very important for us, so you would understand that we are willing to be part of apart from Russia.
Yes, thank you very much, Walter. Can you react to that?
I obviously there was not a question there, but I want to say I certainly understand your concerns, and frankly your very legitimate and justified concerns make it so clear why some of us must stay at the table and raise their voices and be in conversation. And as Daniel was saying, decisions need to be made together. People's voices need to be heard. And that's why there will be no dictating on the part of the Transitional Leadership Council about the organization of the Global Methodist Church in every region of the world. It's going to be truly transitional, and we will have to all speak into, as hard as it's going to be, we'll have to have voices at the convening general conference that help us think through very difficult issues that impinge upon national political crises like the country of Ukraine is facing right now. And we think that there are good-hearted and faithful people all around the world who want to be sure that all of our brothers and sisters are being treated fairly and justly wherever they live.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And God bless to you. You're in our thoughts and prayers.
Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I would raise a question that I received by email. So the rest of us can think about more questions maybe in a few minutes. One of the questions I received from several people was the transitional Book of Discipline paints a picture more of an congregational type of denomination. Isn't this a departure from our Methodist roots, which is connectionism?
Sure, that's a great question. And I would say compared to the way that we have been doing things in the past, I understand how people could interpret some of the issues around, for instance, pastoral deployment, what is being proposed. And I underline what's being proposed for the Global Methodist Church. It's not etched in stone. Sounds a little more congregationalist. But actually, when people read the proposals, whether it's a proposal coming from the Wesleyan Covenant Association or something from the Transitional Leadership Council, when you read those closely, really, it really is quite connectional still. What's being proposed is trying to get local churches more involved in the deployment process of making that decision of a bishop and a district superintendent and local church leaders really working close together about that decision of who their pastor is going to be. So it's not a freelance, hey, it's up to you, local church, who you want. We don't care who you pick. It's just your call. That I get. That's a complete congregationalist approach. Nobody's advocating that that I know of who wants to be part of the Global Methodist Church. Mm-hmm. But we do believe that lay people need to have the opportunity to really have their voices heard as a bishop and his or her cabinet think about the best person to send to their church. And so a number of ideas are being floated around of how they could be more involved. And so I'll just give you one idea. Please don't assume that this is going to be exactly what happens, but it is an idea, a realistic idea that's being floated around. And that is that, that the local church have the freedom to see a list of potential clergy who feel like their time at the church they're currently serving has really come to an end. Their effectiveness in that local church has come to an end. So they put their name on a list to say, you know what, I'm open to a move. I'm not saying I will move, but I'm open to a move. And so a local church can pick some names off of that list, interview them, and give 3 names to their district superintendent and their bishop and say, we were interested in all 3 of these. We think all 3 of them would potentially be good, effective pastors in our local church. What do you think? And we would even give them the opportunity to say, of the 3, we liked this one, maybe a little better than the other 2. But the final decision would be up to the district superintendent, and really the final decision would be up to the bishop. He or she would ultimately make the decision. There'd be some confidential information that to protect both the local church and the clergy person, that really the only people who would be privy to that personal information about the pastor would only be known by the district superintendent and the bishop, who have access to the clergy file. And so there could be a reason why a bishop could say, I really don't think that person is the best one for you, so I'm going to pick one of the other 2 and appoint that person. So really, this is, I'll just be frank with you. I don't know if this is the case in any of your annual conferences, but here in the United States, if you're a very, very large United Methodist Church in the United States, this is how it happens really anyway for many of the large churches. They literally go out, they have a conversation with the bishop, and they say, Bishop, our beloved pastor is retiring. He's been here, she's been here for 40 years. We need a new pastor. It's really, really important. We have a really effective pastor because we have a large church staff. We'd like your permission to hire a search firm to go out and surface some names of potential pastors of our church. We'll interview them, you can interview them, but we want to really be part of making the decision about who the next pastor is going to be of our local church. And when we look at the health and vitality of a number of our large churches, we see that that's been beneficial to them. And so we want that same opportunity for mid-sized churches and small-sized churches as well. That's not really a congregationalist approach. It's still more a connectional approach. It's just inviting the lay people of local churches to have a greater voice in helping the bishop and his or her cabinet make a decision about the most effective clergy person in their local setting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that even a different layer of this question is because of the new rule, or maybe it's just in the transitional book of discipline, but it's about the ownership of the assets, and that's something that we might be, I don't know, we will need to tackle here in Eastern Europe. At least we have some rules, and we will have to have a very deep discussion about this. I don't know, maybe Daniel wants to talk about it or comment on that. Do you see it as an issue, or?
I don't think that it's an issue, but what is important to be said is that in Europe, almost everywhere, along to the Book of Discipline, we have our bylaws approved by the court or a different jurisdiction. So in many cases for the court, for example, the Bulgarian court, the Book of Discipline is something unknown, and they really don't care about it. They will not read it at all. And if I'm a judge, I will do the same. For me, the bylaws are what I need to consider. So in many cases, according to our bylaws here, the bishops are people from abroad. They are not considered even as a person with real responsibility, for the local court. So we have bishop, and it's a voluntary act, not legal act, to obey him, because according to the bylaws we can do something different. And everywhere, the question about the assets is decided differently. But in most Eastern European countries, all the assets, especially properties, buildings, and so on, are property of the annual conference, not the local church. So I think it's a healthy decision, because it's easy for someone to decide to go away and to waste church property for some crazy ideas. We need more wisdom when we are deciding that. So in the future, when we are talking about the organization of the Global Methodist Church in this part of the world, we have also to consider different legal frameworks that we have everywhere in Europe, because most of the countries are members of the European Union, but still we have our national law systems, very different country to country. And we also have to be very careful when we are crafting or changing the bylaws of the churches who will join the Global Methodist Church, and to balance, between what the new Book of Discipline will demand and what the national legal system are demanding from us. So it will be not easy, but I'm very thankful, Walter, that you shared with us that this is an open question, and the new church will be very sensitive and open for creativity according to the local context, not only because of the different psychological profiles of people from Eastern Europe or Nordic countries, but simply also because of the legal the different legal systems that we have. So it's a question for the future considerations and very careful considerations. And I'm very thankful that in Wesleyan Covenant Association we have a lot of lawyers. This is very typical, and they're ready to help.
Yes. Yes, thank you. I think it was important to claim this, because we read that local churches will have all the assets, and it is not true in our region. Okay, anyone else? I would like to encourage you to raise your questions while we have Brother Walton with us. I cannot see any raised hands. Maybe you can just speak up, because I don't have everyone on one screen. Okay. Okay, then I have again an emailed question. What would you suggest for the churches that is important for the preparation phase between now and the alignment? We still have quite some time, especially in our central conference. We have this cascade system of decision making, so we won't be able to align with the GMC anywhere before spring 2023. So what would you suggest we can do, how to prepare for all the changes between the UMC and the GMC?
Sure. I think one of the most important things you can do is, I think local churches, this is a big thing coming up. I don't want to downplay how big of a change this is going to be, and that it is in one way or another going to impact every local church in the United Methodist Church. In one way or another, they are going to be impacted over the next year, over the next 9 months, likely to be. But nor do I want to make this the focus of what their church ought to be about. So here's my advice, and this is just Walter Fenton speaking, not the WCA, not the Global Methodist Church. Here's my advice, is every local church ought to designate a leadership team, including the pastor and a handful of leaders, and say, hey, you know what? We have to be the church on a day-to-day basis, an hour-to-hour basis. Our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ who love Christ, who love to worship together, and who want to go out and share the good news of Jesus Christ, both with their words and both with their hands. And we need to remember that's our principal focus, and we need to be doing that every day. But we do need some people who can keep the rest of us informed of what's happening. And so we're going to designate this small team of leaders at the church to make sure that they're staying fully abreast of what's going on with regards to the protocol of reconciliation and grace through separation, with regards to the 2022 General Conference. They just stay up to speed on what's going on. And frankly, Daniel touched on something just a moment ago. We'll do everything we can as the Transitional Leadership Council and the Wesleyan Covenant Association to keep you informed. But, you know, as the gentleman who asked the first question from Norway, and as Daniel was just saying, some issues that are raised about forming a new church are so particular to your certain situation that nobody will be able to answer them properly and fully except you in your local church. You'll have to understand how is this decision that the Global Methodist Church is proposing, how would that impact us in our local setting as a local church? And so if you have a team who's trying to get all of those questions answered, doing the best they can to stay informed, and then I think sometime in probably mid-March to late March, by mid to late March, we will probably hear from the Commission on General Conference if they're going to decide to move ahead and continue to say, yes, we're going to have an in-person General Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States in late August and September, and that protocol is going to be voted on. Then I think that team who's been doing that work needs to start to maybe do small group meetings. Get small group meetings together, and they need to go out and share, hey, here's what's likely to happen. Here's what we know. Here's some questions that we're going to have to answer as a congregation. Here's what's being proposed for us. And spend most of maybe March, April, and May doing that. And then, you know, as we get closer to the General Conference, say, you know, at some point, we're going to need to have some church-wide meetings where we all get together, all of us who are members of the church, and we're going to lay out, we've already been talking to you about it in small group settings, we're going to lay out in a church-wide meeting what's ahead of us and our options for going forward. And we'd like to be as much on the same page as a local church as we possibly can be. We don't want to make decisions that's going to divide us right down the middle. We want to be able to make a decision that is a consensus decision where the majority of us say, yep, this is what we need to do and where we need to move. So I think it's a careful ramping up of helping people understand their options as you continue to do the most important thing, and that is to be the Church of Jesus Christ every day in your community. Mm-hmm. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it will be very helpful for even those that could not join us today, but they are interested and they are, pondering this question. So thank you for that.
Sure.
I would like to give the opportunity for anyone who didn't pose any questions so far. But also, I don't want to take more of your time than necessary.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Harald.
I'm a pastor in Norway, and I've heard concerns, that's to you, Mr. Fenton, about the WCA. That here in Norway, some people say that they are full of QAnon and the conspiracy theoretics. And we don't want to be associated with that. What do you say about that?
Yeah, with all due respect to people who are saying that WCA people are QAnon people, I've never met anybody. I have been traveling around as a pastor in the United Methodist Church. I worked for Good News for a number of years, going all the way back to 1999, and I have visited almost every annual conference in the United States and made presentations, talked to many theological conservative pastors and lay people, many centrists, many progressives. I know a number of our bishops. I've been to Africa to meet with brothers and sisters, but here in the US, with all due respect, that person doesn't know what he or she's talking about. I've never bumped into a clergy colleague here in the US who's said anything favorable about the QAnon movement. If anything, they're very frustrated, and some of them are even angry with the QAnon conspiracy stuff. And most United Methodist lay people, whether they're theologically conservatives or centrist or progressives, want nothing to do with those kind of outlandish conspiracy theories. And so anybody who thinks that the WCA is somehow aligned with QAnon, they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't know WCA people. And with all due respect, that's just a little far out there.
Yes, thank you very much. I thought that was the case, but I had to ask so that I can have something to answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate the question and the opportunity to answer it. We get stuff like that here in the US, people who say we're affiliated with QAnon, and we just have to point out to them, I don't know how you get there. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. Okay, Samuel is not raising his hand, I think. Yeah, he's just clapping. Okay, so if there are no more questions, last chance, please come forward. Or you will have to wait one more month until our next meeting, which is due, I think, in a month. I will ask Daniel about the date. We will meet in this format again with Keith Boyette, the president of the WCA globally. So it will be, again, a very fruitful and very informative night. And before we close, I would like to ask Daniel, as the president of our regional chapter, to close up in prayer. And then we will wish you a good night, and for Walter, a nice day. But yeah, you are raising your hand. Yeah, Walter.
Yes. Daniel, I would be happy for you to pray as well. But if you would give me the privilege of offering a prayer.
Gladly.
I would appreciate that opportunity.
I will only to say that the next meeting will be on the 9th of January. You can check our website and February. And probably because of the problem, some people to be in time so early, especially in Slovak Republic, Czech Republic, etc. We can a little bit reschedule it and to start at 7 p.m. Bulgarian time, 6 p.m. Slovak and Czech time. It will be probably better, but I will talk with Keith about it. I think it will be okay. So Gladly to you, Walter.
Well, once again, thank you so much. I know Keith is looking forward to being with all of you. I've talked to Keith 4 or 5 times every day, and so he's looking forward to being with you. So thank you for giving me the privilege to say the closing prayer. Creator and eternal God, we praise your high and holy name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We thank you for all of the good gifts that you've given to us. Most of all, we thank you for your Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who's liberated us from our slavery to sin and our fear of death through the powerful cross and through his great, mighty resurrection that you brought about. Lord, we give you thanks and praise and glory for all that you have done in our lives. Lord, I thank you for this great privilege and honor of being with my brothers and sisters all across Europe and Eurasia. I thank you for them. What a privilege you give to each one of us, that we have brothers and sisters all around the world proclaiming your high and holy name and attempting to be your faithful disciples. Lord, we just pray that you would continue to encourage us, help us to grow, so that we would not just be your faithful disciples, but we would be your faithful and joyful and obedient disciples. Be with us as we go our way throughout the remainder of this day and throughout the remainder of this week. In your name we pray. Amen.